All right, hello and welcome to another episode of Death by Bunjie. As you know, I am looking to upgrade Bunjie this year, looking to upgrade the crossbow. Heading into the 2021 crossbow seasons, what crossbow will I use? It's a mystery, but we're going to find out, aren't we? We're looking at different options, and we have tons of options. Now, this one I'm going to do a little different. I'm on my phone, and I'm going to just type in the next one on our list. We are looking this morning, before I go to work, at AXE Crossbows. Boom. Why am I there? What are we looking at here? Good Lord, get out of there. Okay, we're going to Google. We're going to start by looking at AXE Crossbows. This video's off to a rough start already. So we'll do it on the phone here. We'll see how that works out. Maybe this is going to work. Maybe it's not. We'll do this one, see how it looks. AXE Crossbows, and it takes me to Feradyne.com. Where have we heard about Feradyne.com before? Feradyne, the company. Where have we heard about that? Rage, right? Rage Broadheads, my favorite broadheads. And that brings up the first question that I have about Feradyne. I understand that's the mother corporation, right? That's the mother company that owns all these other subsidiaries of Rage Broadheads, AXE Crossbows, that sort of thing. To me, I would rather have RageBroadheads.com and AXECrossbows.com. Or just have Rage Crossbows, right? And all these other products that they sell. Feradyne, the name Feradyne, I don't even know why why do we even bother to have a logo made for Feradyne? You don't sell anything. You just oversee all these other products. They sell targets, trail cameras, bow hunting related stuff. If we look at brands, they sell Apple Archery, never even heard of that, don't know what it is. AXE Crossbows, black hole targets, block targets. They make my block target. They own Muzzy, look at that. You know, Muzzy is the fixed broadhead of choice, right? And they're owned by the same company that owns Rage. First thing I see, let's look at the website. We got a Rage crossbow, Sorry, not a Rage crossbow. We have an AXE crossbow here. First thing we see, AXE Crossbows. And look at the logo. It has a crossbow in the logo. That's pretty cool. Incidentally, I have shot now for 11 years an Excalibur Axiom. And a couple of years ago, Excalibur came out with an updated version, which is pretty much the updated modern version of my crossbow, which was called the AXE 340, shoots 340 feet per second. So after 10 years or so, they managed to increase the speed from 305 to 340. So we got this 340 feet per second crossbow, which I was looking at, and then all of a sudden they changed the name to the MAG 340, right? So that's the modern version of Bunjie, I think. And we'll talk about that on the other crossbow, on the other review of their webpage. But if you look on here, this is AXE Crossbows. I really do believe that Excalibur released the AXE without realizing that there was another crossbow manufacturer called the AXE. Like, I wouldn't be surprised they released this. They got it out to market. You could buy them. You can still buy them with that logo on it, with that name on it. But they probably got a nasty letter from Feradyne saying, hey, that's ours. So we have a good-looking crossbow there. The first thing I notice about this, of course, is it's a reverse limb crossbow. Now, I'm not opposed to the concept of the reverse limbs. 10, 11 years ago, I thought that was sort of a new concept. I wasn't real interested in trying out something new and untested. But I gotta say, as I mentioned in my book, The Death by Bunjie Crossbow Story, Confessions of a Crossbow Hunter, you can check that out on Amazon.com, and you can buy it through deathbybunjie.com now too, because by popular demand, it's back on there. People were saying they didn't want to deal with Amazon. You can buy it directly from me if you wish to do that. But I kind of mentioned in that book, when I was looking at crossbows and doing this whole process 10 years ago, going through the web pages, talking to people about their crossbow experiences with different brands, the reverse limb design was new, a little untested. I wasn't so sure that I liked it, but it's still around. There are a couple of manufacturers who favor that design, still seem to go forward with it, and AXE Feradyne is one of those manufacturers. So we look at this thing, and you can see one of the things I don't necessarily like about the reverse limb design is the fact that it seems to move the crossbow back in your face more. You can see the balance. I don't know, I haven't shot one of those reverse limb crossbows yet, but that's like the next step. I'm going to go through all these different manufacturers and do these videos first, and then I will look at trying out the ones that passed this initial test. I'm not going to go out and shoot every crossbow on the market. Instead, I'm just going to look at the ones that have the features I'm looking for, the features that complement my hunting style, and this is, I think, the same process you should be employing if you're looking for a new crossbow. What features complement your hunting style, your anticipated hunting style, strategies and whatnot, and then go try out those crossbows before you make a decision. That's what I'm going to be doing. It does seem to move the limbs back a little bit. And what I mean by that, you can see here that the butt of those limbs, the back of those limbs is only inches from his face. If the comfort level is still there, I suppose that's not a problem. I like the fact that the arrow we're looking at appears to have a Rage Broadhead affixed to the fore end. I do like the Rage. That's nice, but right off the bat, I see something about this crossbow that I don't like. See how that arrow, that broadhead, sticks out past the stirrup area? It's unprotected. And I don't like that. That is departing from the traditional design of crossbows that we have enjoyed for, well, I've enjoyed for a decade. But the stirrup area serves a couple of functions. It helps you cock the crossbow. I get that, right? That's important. This one appears to have a drop-down stirrup where there's some advantages to that, I understand. But the stirrup area, when you have the stirrup protruding past the end of the crossbow, past the end of the rail, past the riser, that area gives a little bit of extra protection for the arrow, for the broadhead as it's protruding out past the riser. It's okay that it protrudes out past the riser because if the stirrup is there, that should protect it somewhat. Whether you're walking through the field, it won't get snagged on branches, anything like that as easily because that stirrup is there to protect it. For me, most importantly, I sit in a blind from time to time. I plan to do a lot more of that in the future. And sitting in a blind, what I have done traditionally is I've had Bunjie not sitting on my lap, but I've had the stirrup of the crossbow on the ground in front of me with the stock up here, right? And that way I can just lift and shoot. And that worked perfectly this year on the biggest buck I've ever killed in Pennsylvania. It worked perfectly. I had to make a snap decision to flip that crossbow, had to aim quickly, pull the trigger quickly, get that shot taken quickly. All of it came together perfectly. But if my crossbow was not seated that way where I could just lift it up and shoot it, I wouldn't have been able to get that done. That's very important to me. Now with this crossbow, what I'm seeing here, I can't set this crossbow down on the stirrup in front of me. Possibly that stirrup kicks up a little bit, but it doesn't look as though it will protect the broadhead the way that a more traditional stirrup would do. Not saying you got to have a traditional stirrup. I'm just saying that this is a factor to consider. Everything I talk about in these videos is just a factor to consider. AXE Crossbows, forged for the fury of the field. AXE Crossbows are engineered from the ground up to provide an unparalleled shooting experience. Okay, I'll stop the movie trailer voice. I guess it's probably don't need all of that. AXE leads the industry with best-in-class efficiency, noise, and vibration reduction. Very important stuff. I like that too. And proprietary technologies designed to deliver unprecedented balance, best-in-class safety, and hyper accuracy. Always a little skeptical of crossbows that say that they're hyper accurate or extremely accurate. To me, it's not really a sliding scale. I mean, it's either accurate or it's not. Are we hitting bullseyes or aren't we? Because if it's not hitting bullseyes, it's not accurate, right? I mean, it's kind of accurate, I guess. I do that myself, but hyper accuracy, well, you know, is it accurate or not? 0.166 bolt blistering downrange at speeds in excess of 400 feet per second. It's a 0.166 bolt. If that's the diameter of what we're getting 400 feet per second out of, I can tell you I'm probably not interested. Wow. Okay, let's see what we got here. 5 stars on the AXE 405 for $16.99. That is a price range, and I should comment on that too. I'm kind of looking at the flagship of each of these manufacturers when I do these reviews. And that's because I'm probably going to buy and end up buying the flagship of one of these manufacturers. Keep in mind, for 11 years I hunted with Bunjie, which was the lowest priced Excalibur, and I did 11 seasons with that crossbow. I've hunted with that crossbow long enough, never upgraded. I've saved up enough money to justify buying a more expensive crossbow. Now, I don't know that I'm buying a $3,000 Raven. We'll review them down the road here. But the $1,600, maybe even this $2,000 one next to it, one of those crossbows, is that in my price range? Potentially, if the features are there. It's at least one I would go try out. Let's look at this 405 here and see what they got. AXE 405. I don't know everything about crossbows, But I would not be surprised if this crossbow shoots approximately 405 feet per second. The name kind of gives that away. And I kind of appreciate that they're looking like this is what you're kind of getting with us, right? Look at the pictures. The top down, what do we see on that? We see a crank. Why has it got a crank? Not a big fan of the cranks. I do see the lack of a shooting rail. If we blow up this picture, look at that. That shooting rail is not a shooting rail. It doesn't have a flight groove anyway. It does appear as though the arrow is rolling or otherwise being propelled without all of the friction created by the flight groove or flight rail. The more traditional style of crossbows like Bunjie, you slide the arrow in and it goes into a groove. The cock feather drops down into the flight groove and shoots off the rail that way. Interesting. Very interesting design. That's the cam design. All right, that's pretty good. Another picture of our cams and cables. That is a complicated mess to a guy that shot a recurve all this time, but it's something I'm going to have to get used to, I'm betting. Okay, we've got that is our cocking sled that comes down. It does have that belt that pulls the cocking sled back. That looks like the entire mechanism. This is a newer thing, at least to me. I'm not familiar with this, but I do see this on a lot of manufacturers now. But that entire safety mechanism, the entire trigger mechanism, not the whole trigger, but the guts of the trigger up above, all that slides down on this sled and attaches to the string. And when you're cocking it, it cranks it back and it pulls that belt. That belt will wind up, I'm assuming, or pulls that belt back through. And then that whole sled will slide back into place. Once that clicks into place, it's now attached to the trigger, ready to fire the whole bit and work the safety the whole bit. That's pretty handy. I like that design overall if it is one that over time proves to be effective. A little concerned that, you know, I inevitably have hemlock needles in my flight groove, for example, and there's a chance that if I walk in there and I cock my crossbow in a stand or whatever, that I'm going to end up with hemlock needles on my belt. I'm just thinking of possibles here. You know, don't read too much into this. I would still, that none of these things really is a deal breaker for me necessarily. These are factors to consider when you're looking at crossbows. That's all I'm doing in these videos. So there's another picture of that. That is an interesting groove, very similar to the Raven that we looked at in another video, and I'll do more looking on those Ravens. And sure enough, if we blow that up, see how that arrow protrudes right there? You're walking through the woods, you got a problem. It still does not look like it's long enough, okay? It doesn't look like it extends the length of the crossbow enough to protect the tip of that broadhead the way I would like to see it protected. There's some advantages to this style of a stirrup. I get that. And I think one of the reasons they do this is, and what I've seen anyway, is that you can, with that drop down, you're moving your foot back up the rail, back up the barrel of the crossbow. And yes, crossbows technically do have barrels. If you look at the hunter safety course on crossbows, they do refer to it as a barrel. That's not the part that the arrow's on, but that's the barrel of the crossbows, where your foregrip is, right? That's the front end of the crossbow or the barrel. But that section of the crossbow, by moving the stirrup further back toward you as you're cocking it, you gain some leverage. You don't have to stand up as far, so you've got more strength when you're cocking these with a rope cocker. There are newer designs for stirrups and modifications like this that still protect the arrow. If you look at the Dr. Stirrup add-ons that you can buy and attach to Excalibur crossbows, those add-ons don't have this problem. They actually have a little sleeve that goes over the arrow, and that arrow is totally protected, 360 degrees almost, it looks like, on those kinds of products. I haven't bought them, haven't used them, but that's a better design to me than this. I'm not a big fan of this design. What do we got for specs on this bad boy? We know the price. This one shoots 405 feet per second, adjustable butt stock, an integrated crank with decock feature, so you can cock it or decock it, uncock it with the crank. That's nice. Okay, so we can at least uncock it. Adjustable foot peg. They don't even refer to it as a stirrup. They call it a foot peg, and it is adjustable. 3 AXE micro diameter bolts with 100 grain practice tips. So we're shooting an arrow. We're expecting this to be a 100 grain broadhead on their .166 diameter arrow. Wow, okay. With the foot peg extended, the overall length goes out to 32 inches from the 27. So maybe it extends far enough to protect that arrow, to protect the broadhead. I'd like to see that in the pictures. I would include that in the pictures. Oh, we got a video, so we could watch a little video of the guy shooting it. Maybe we get something out of that. We'll see where that goes.
Hey everyone, I'm Doug Kinetic, professional shooter for over 30 years.
Hi, Doug.
To show you this brand new crossbow from AXE.
I want to see him shoot it. That's all I want to see.
Can be very dangerous, super quiet, super...
So here we are cocking it. We see the cocking sled go back.
It automatically puts the safety on.
Let me pause this real quick. The safety on the Excaliburs does not automatically engage. That's never been a problem for me. Most of the rifles I've used over the years, I don't do a lot with rifles anymore. In fact, I only own one, and that's just the old 30-30 that I had. But the safety doesn't automatically engage on most of the rifles that I've used over the years either. So a familiarity with that weapon and the pattern or the routine that you get into, that safety routine, that safety procedure, is very important. And that's something I've developed with Genevieve and her crossbow, which is slightly different from mine because she uses a cranking device. So you have to have that familiarity and you have to set up that safety routine. It will be the same with a new crossbow. If I were to purchase one of these, I would just have a different routine. I would have to modify my routine, but continually do and regimentally continue to practice that safe routine. Very important. So it doesn't bother me that this one clicks on automatically. That's a little different from my Excalibur, but that's okay. That's okay. So he's going to load an arrow so we can see how it does. It goes in here.
Shoe box. I'm going to line it right up. You'll hear it snap on the string.
Ooh, it has like a snap-on knock, very similar to the compound bows must be. But it snaps in place.
405 foot per second. And also, I didn't even tell you, we've got the adjustable optic here. You can dial it in for the velocity of your crossbow once you start to get it sighted.
Okay, so it has a speed ring.
Points from 20 to 100 yards. Excuse me, I was going to say 60, because to me anything after 60 is crazy, but these things will shoot. But they are so accurate, it's fun to shoot. I've only shot this one out to 60 so far, but I can't wait to try it out to 100. I'm going to take a shot here on this target, and I want you to hear how quiet this crossbow is.
Moment of truth. Ooh, there's a little bit of an echo there. It's hard to tell on YouTube. You got to shoot these things in person and really compare one to the other. I am not hopeful that I'm going to get real quiet with a crossbow. That's just a fact. I don't think that quiet and crossbows are terms that should be used together. I've commented on that before, and I really feel that way when I hear this one go off. You've got that echo reverberating throughout the yard that he's in, that sort of thing. It's just the way it is. Well, interesting crossbows. The 405, they do have the 440. See what that shoots for arrows. If we click on that, very similar style and design. The stock, though, is a lot thicker. I mean, it looks a lot taller. It looks like a more rugged crossbow, or at least a heavier crossbow. This must be their newest model for 2021, I'm betting. This all looks the same. I don't see much different here. And in fact, we're seeing 0.166 diameter, 19.5-inch bolts, 403 grains, have included 100 grain practice tip. So we're 403 grains on these arrows at 0.166 diameter. Let's look at these arrows. Where can we look at these arrows? I want to see one of the arrows and see what they look like, or bolts if you prefer. I do want to look at one of those and see what we've got before we see if this bad boy mooses. Pretty sure it's going to moose. So here's your arrows. That's your knock system. So you can get a lighted knock on it. That's cool. I like the lighted knocks. I prefer that. I film, so I have to be able to see that. I like to be able to see that going from the crossbow. It helps with filming. It helps you in the field looking to see how your shot was placed. Sometimes I think it's one way, and then you look on the video and it's a little different, and it causes you to pause a little bit. So having a lighted knock, very important to me. If you go to the deathbybungie.com gear page, the gear page on there, the gear that I use is listed on there. Okay, so you can go through and you can actually search it and find out what kind of knocks I use, that sort of thing. But I prefer the Burt Coyote Luminox, and they make them for, they might even make them for this kind of crossbow, who knows, for these sorts of arrows. When I look at this, now, we see the knock, we have the, what are those called? Castle style vanes, I think they're called. And that's pretty cool. I like those. I got no problem with that. These will have to go with the cock feather down in order to have that snap on onto the string. That probably is the case. But look over here. Now this is a result of your micro diameter arrow, your micro diameter bolt. This smaller arrow has an outsert extended on it. Okay, it's got like a sleeve that comes down that's installed on the end of that arrow. And the reason for that, I suspect, is to get the diameter back up to where it needs to be so that you can screw on a proper broadhead. the ferrule on your broadhead is going to be too big to screw into that micro diameter arrow. It'll go on there, but it's going to have a lot of overlap, right? It's going to be wider at the base of that broadhead than the arrow. So there'll like be a notch. And that's not ideal. You'd rather have a sleeker design like this. So this is a way for them to sort of get around that. I understand that. That works for me. That's okay. So a 403 grain bolt. Let's do something else here. One thing I like to do on these videos, and some of you guys, if you saw my previous one on this, you probably know what I'm talking about here. But we're going to go to the Realtree Arrow Momentum Calculator, and we're going to click on that, and then we're going to, let's see. Oh, I don't get a chance to win anything this time. So we'll click on arrow weight, and we're going to add the arrow weight of 403. And that bad boy was traveling at a rapid, más rápido, 440 feet per second. That's pretty fast. And we're going to hit generate kinetic energy and whatnot. And kaboom, it mooses. Yes, yes, it mooses. Not much surprise there, really. But we have a 403 grain arrow traveling at 440, and that is at 173.21 foot-pounds of kinetic energy. Momentum, 0.787. Out of the box with a 100 grain field point. Look at those numbers. Now, in my head, I'm going to do some rough math here. We are going to put a 150 grain broadhead on there because I use the Rage Trypan, the steel version of it, the big heavy monster. And I have box after box of those. And I kind of want to use the same broadhead that Genevieve prefers. So I probably will be using those, a 150 grain broadhead. So if I combine that with their arrow setup, I'm adding 50 grains. So let's say we're up to 453. That's a fair assessment. But we're losing probably around 15 feet per second. I calculated that in the previous video, but it's basically we're going on the high end here. I'm just guessing that I'm going to lose about 1.5 feet per second for every 5 grains that I add to the arrow. So we've got, you multiply that by 10 because we're going to 50, and you do all the math and whatnot. And we're probably losing around 15. So probably shooting around 425 with a 453 grain arrow. So I'm going to refresh this bad boy and start over. I'm going to see if that helped, if that worked, and we're going to go to 453, and we're going to drop down here to 425, and we're going to generate that and see if it changes those numbers for us. It did. Look at the substantial increase in numbers. Not building fancy new arrows, nothing like that. Just a modern crossbow, admittedly the flagship from AXE Crossbows, right? The high-end one, the expensive one. But there's lots of crossbows that cost a lot less that shoot this fast. Lots of them. This day and age, it's a buyer's market for crossbows in this day and age. But this one at 453 grains, 425 feet per second, is getting pretty much out of the box, right? With my broadhead of choice, Genevieve's broadhead of choice, 181.65 foot-pounds and 0.855 slugs. I'm going to screenshot that and capture that so that I can compare all of these later on down the road. But we're talking out of the box with a 150 grain broadhead. Look at those numbers. Pretty impressive stuff. I'm going to keep doing this style of video with each crossbow manufacturer. I'm going to try and put out a bunch of these. There's little tidbits spread throughout each video. Hopefully you will enjoy. Until the next video, all hail Bunjie.